I've never seen that comparison help anyone. What I think is a lot more helpful is comparing men to boys. What is a man versus a boy? And emotional intelligence, for me, plays a huge role in that. If I see a man acting like a child, I do not see him as a man.
Quite an interesting thing that to say in terms of, in general, the way that not just say masculinity, but in terms of mental health as a whole being something that is normalized in a way, but not it as in general, but not in men. So it's quite interesting because there are men that act like children and not understand why they are acting this way, and were you raised this way in a way? Do you think that going there to that, do you think that having going back to mentors, having a great father figure impacts the way that a man acts?
Yeah, because I think men look to other men to tell us how to be men. And if you don't have a good father figure or a good model in it, ideally it shouldn't just be a father, it should be many men. It should be when you're growing up, you can look at the men around you and say, these are the men I want to model myself after. And I think that's why there are so many bad models of men online, is because people just get desperate and then just look for anyone who says I'm the model, and which usually comes with a lot of ego and a lot of so maybe someone who themselves they're insecure, and what will make me feel better is if I have all these men following me or all these boys following me, and that's a whole just bag of bad. What we want to do first is, I think, say, well, what is a model of a man I want to be or that I want to model my after? Do I see those men and can I model myself after them? And what people like myself and others are doing who are active in the men's space, we're trying to bring those models. That's why if I say, if I see a man acting like a boy, I do not see him as a man. I think that's an important sentence to say. And I think because then you say, what is the difference emotionally? And well, that's going to have a cultural component. Different culture does different ways. I'm an American, but as someone who has strong Greek heritage, Greek men have a slightly different men. And so there is some fuzziness around this, but the biggest thing is just, I think if you throw a tantrum as an adult, I can't think of a single culture that is going to respect that, except for reasons I still cannot understand in politicians. In the U.S., at least, we have politicians who scream and yell and shout, and we say, "Oh my God, are they passionate?" Instead of, "Oh my God, are they children?" I still do not understand that.
I was going to say something in terms of referencing to that, and also I find it difficult is this thing. I feel like the social media has so power over some of us in a way that the men can go on social media and cry out their problems, and definitely the audience will welcome them with warm arms. And in some point, I don't realize it. And as a man, I would say that most men nowadays complain about their problems and tell the world, "Nah, I'm going through this, and how can you assist me?" In a way, I believe that as a man, as much as you're suffering, try by any means to take care of yourself, and not being able, once you allow yourself to cry about the problems, that's where you lose your self-worth in a way. That's where you will always need some type of validation amongst your peers, amongst everyone in terms, and also including social media. It's something that as society in general, or as society of men, that we should stop doing. And in a way, they don't realize that they bring some type of, let's say, accumulation in terms of where I see as someone who is weak, someone that can't keep his feelings intact. And you spoke about this thing of finding role models, good role models. And I try by any means to run away from the conversation. Would you say that in a way that finding role models are people like Andrew Tate?
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate or that. And I have a question for you, just to make sure I'm understanding you right. I mean, do you think there is a way for a man to cry as a man?
Definitely. But as much as the way that I'm seeing it, man is cry as a man, in the way, there are some factors that contribute to that in terms of humiliating yourself, in terms of, for example, we have a crisis where as sometimes we think that women are on our side in terms of sharing our emotions with them, and we cry in front of them, and they humiliate us in terms of, no, he cried, and they end up leaving us. That's where we learn that we shouldn't cry. That's why,
right,
in a way, I invited a person like you in terms of trying to clear out some air. How can men cry without feeling humiliated?
Well, I think there's two answers for that. First, I think if you are a man who cries and you're with a woman who has left you because of it, that is her problem. That's not yours. That is you finding someone who maybe she is not emotionally mature enough to realize that her partner is a human being. Because we are all men, but before we are men, we are humans. All humans, just like all primates, we are social creatures. We all have emotions, and we need a community to help us process our feelings. All of us do this. This is just part of being human. So part one is realizing if I'm with a woman and she leaves me because of my feelings, I would say she does not have emotional maturity. The second thing I would say is this is why it's so important for men to be open with each other, of holding space for each other. I have been there where I have been with a deep friend, someone who I would call a brother, and I've held them as they've cried. And I still see the strength in them. Like, I'm there to help them through this moment. I'm just giving them space. And when they're calm and then we can maybe talk about, okay, what's the plan? Do you want to help? Do you need help? Do you just need me to be here for support? Do you want me to give you a hand in this? What can we do? But we have to give space for us to be humans with emotions. That's just part of being alive.
And going back to you mentioned something about masculinity, of talking the side of positivity when it comes to masculinity. How can emotional intelligence be seen as a strength to a healthier form of masculinity?
I think if you make being a man. Okay, so there was a TEDx talk by this guy, Chris Hadfield, who ran a men's group or runs a men's group up in Vancouver, Canada. And I actually contacted him, and he was a great resource to me when I was starting a men's group. And on that TEDx talk that you can find online, he talks about male vulnerability. And the mantra or the demand on men is be strong, don't be weak. We can't change that. And I don't think it's a good idea to change that. But what we can do is we can define strong. Now, if you come to me and you say, I have a deep wound inside me, you tell me which takes more strength. Does it take more strength to go feel that feeling, talk about it, admit it to someone? Or does it take more strength to run away from it and hide and never talk about it to anyone else? Clearly, it's the first. So emotional intelligence for me includes things like being able to process my feelings, being able to name my own feelings so I can even communicate them to others, being able to listen to others, actually listen and create space. That requires strength because I have to know that I'm going to be able to survive this thing that feels maybe really tough. Emotional abilities are a key part of being a strong man, in my opinion.
You spoke about communicating your feelings, and again, speaking about in general, generalizing the conversation around men's mental health and also male masculinity. Isn't, in a way, society has seen this thing of communicating your feelings as something that is complaining, whining, and people like, in terms of when you get in that conversation, people like David Goggins preach the word of no. As much as you're feeling sorry for yourself, no, go to the gym, run. In terms of that, what is your take on that?
I think like everything has a place where it's too little and too much. And so, for example, for sharing our feelings, the way I describe it when I'm working with my clients is we don't need to put them into a jar. We also don't need to put them on billboards. We need to actually assess who are the safe people around me who, if I just share this with them and I can get it off my chest, I know I will feel better, and they will at the same time have the opportunity to give me space, which will hopefully deepen our relationship. If you trust me enough to open to me, oh my God, I feel that's a huge gift to me as a brother, as a friend, that you trust me almost like a teammate, just as a teammate would trust me by passing me the ball if we're playing soccer, that you trust me with your feelings to pass this to me, to let me hold this with you for a moment. I'm honored to be entrusted and to know that you see me in this way. And then the next thing is I get to pass the ball back to you. I get to share these feelings with you, and I get to feel like what it's like to have someone I trust. And so that to me is the ideal that we want to focus on and keep going. Otherwise, if we go in either extreme, then yeah, we might start having problems.
Creating that safe space for us to share what we actually feel and not get that back of our head, not thinking that I will be judged for saying such thing, or I will be judged on crying, I will be judged on just being within my own emotions. So I just get into the self-compassion as the foundation for success. So I just want you to help us out here in terms of differentiating between self-compassion from self-pity.
Right. So self-pity, I would say, depends on a victim mentality, which I know is something you've talked about in some of your previous podcasts and guests. And I think everyone in the world agrees that that's not going to help you, because when you're a victim, I've now given up my ability to do anything positive about the situation. At the same time, I think there are some people who then say, well, then you should own everything. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense either. Because say for my accent, for example, the way I talk is based on the environment I grew up in. I talk like someone from Western Pennsylvania in the United States. You talk like someone from South Africa. Yeah. But there's it's kind of ours, kind of not, but we self-pity would be to say, oh my God, I could never talk any other way, or I could never use any other words, and give up. Self-compassion is, I think, takes a good road between I am a broken person, which is self-pity, and narcissism, or extreme high self-esteem, which is saying I'm the most amazing thing in the world. Self-compassion does neither of those. It says, I am human, you are human. Being human is hard. We are all imperfect, yet we are still all deserving of love. Life is inherently hard. We're all trying our best. And I can recognize that you have struggles, and that you can recognize that I have struggles, and we can be in this moment of sharing being human together.
As you were saying, actually, and I love the fact that you said that when you explain self-pity in terms of differentiating it from self-compassion, in terms of you cannot change the environment that you grew up in terms of, and I really sometimes that one thing that people don't understand, and in a way try to judge you by saying that you think you are better than them. In a way, that's how the culture it is. In terms of, for example, if I grew up here in South Africa, if I grew up in, let's say, in suburbs, and I meet someone that grew up in the townships, and in terms of how our vocabulary when it comes to language, how it is, there's this sense of no, you think you are better than us when just because you stay in the suburbs. So I agree with you in terms of the definition, and spoke about it was something that was really very important. I forgot to jot it down. Actually, I forgot to jot it down. Or actually, in terms of actionable for self-compassion, and sometimes it's quite hard to practice this thing, same as practicing consistency, practicing self-discipline. What are some practical tools or exercises that individual can implement to start developing a more compassionate inner dialogue?
So the most useful thing I have found is to practice how you talk to yourself. So first, noticing, how do I talk to myself on a regular basis? I've seen some people who they will put timers on their phone, and they will go off and they will just say, okay, right now, how have I been engaging with myself? And then so watching yourself and maybe asking, is this how I would talk to someone I love or a close friend? If the answer is no, do something else. Another thing I've seen people do that I did was I would pick one decision I had to make in my day, and I would try to practice, how would I practice this from a place of compassion? So I like really small things. I started with things like, what do I want to eat for dinner today? Or how do I want to spend the next 15 minutes? And so there wasn't an answer that was already made for especially the 15 minutes, which was actually my favorite one. Sometimes it would be really compassionate for myself to do my homework or to do the laundry. Other times, you know what you need right now is I just need a rest. Other times it was to make dinner, but it was just to practice making decisions from a place of compassion. If I can put myself into an emotional state of compassion, it's really easy for me to take actions from that place, but I have to sometimes consciously put myself into that. And again, Kristen F. has a great book called Self-Compassion that escapes me right now, is also really good at putting some of these ideas out in ways that you can do.